one day our boss sat us down and he told us this person won't be coming back. Today was his last day.
Their behavior might have changed, increase our workload day to day. It's been increasing a lot. So it's kind of, affects our mental health as well.
Did you feel like a little bit more micromanaged with having to document pretty much? Layoffs are usually a huge deal for the people that are let go, but no one really talks about the employees that get left behind at a company after layoffs happen. It's not always a better position to be in, and I wanted to explain why. That's why I spoke to real software engineers in the industry to hear more about the cultural shift at their jobs after they saw colleagues getting let go. It's obviously not the same as being the person who got laid off, but there's still a lot of negative consequences around being left behind. So I wanted to share that insight with you guys because I thought it would be helpful. There was a recent article that came out about adapting to the new normal after company layoffs. Companies expect remaining employees to just be grateful that they still have a job. And further, they expect that they'll be unaffected by their colleagues being let go. But this isn't the case. In fact, there are a ton of negative consequences to seeing your peers get laid off. For one, engagement starts to plummet at a company. People's motivation, pride, and their future and present commitment to the company starts to fall by 8 to 13% compared to companies that don't have layoffs. And Pim has seen this firsthand. This is Pim. He's a software engineer in the Netherlands, and he had to go through seeing his own colleagues get let go from his team.
I guess the slacker was let go. The person who was dragging the team down was let go. But you could really notice over the next couple of weeks the mood shift in the office. Like someone's missing. Everyone has their own personality, and you kind of expect a particular kind of energy in the room. And when that energy is no longer there, it's a little awkward. So it was awkward. It was kind of demotivating, and for a while I did think about quitting, but I didn't in the end. So
this makes sense too. I mean, if you see others around you getting let go, then the morale starts to shift, and you can't help but wonder, are you next? The trust becomes strained between employee and employer. There's that unspoken rule that when you join a company, if you work hard and do well, then you'll continue to stay employed. But when the psychological safety is removed from the equation, then it breeds a lot of mistrust.
Mass layoffs. Using someone's livelihood to balance the books, right? It's so normal in America today that we don't even understand how broken and how damaging it is, not only to human beings, but to business. And so we've literally created cultures in which every single day, everybody comes to work and lies, hides, and fakes. And we're asking our youngest generation to work and succeed and find themselves and build their confidence and overcome their addiction to technology and build strong relationships at work. We're asking them to do this, and these are the environments we've created.
And he's right. I mean, we promise certain things to people that are just coming into the workforce, only to pull out of that promise as soon as the market starts to take a downturn. In fact, people are so taken aback by layoffs that they're more likely to quit after seeing their colleagues get let go. A recent article showed that coworkers of people that got laid off were 7.7% more likely to quit themselves. They tend to experience survivor syndrome. It's a term used to describe the feeling someone has when they've survived a round of layoffs. It includes a lot of guilt and sometimes confusion over why they were spared over someone else. It might sound dramatic, but people who experience this describe it as a very real and overwhelming feeling. It can even start to impact their ability to function in a role, especially since they've probably had to absorb new tasks that were once handled by someone else. So just being real for a moment, I saw my own colleagues get pushed out of the company, and it definitely didn't help morale on the team. For me, it just signaled that we were all replaceable at the end of the day, and that we, the leftovers, had to prove that the money that they were spending on us actually mattered to the company's bottom line. It really put things in a perspective for me. I started to realize that this is just a job at the end of the day. It pays my bills, gives me something to do, but honestly, they could lay me off at any time, no matter how hard I worked. So it didn't really make sense to go beyond what was expected of me. I was tired of letting my health get out of hand for a company that didn't really actually care about me. I alluded to this earlier in the video, but getting laid off sucks. There's no way around that. It's the worst. There's no question about it. I don't think it's the better option, but I also don't think not getting laid off is a good option either. For one, layoffs indicate that a company isn't doing well. This means lower profit margins, less resources, less flexibility, and stricter deadlines. It usually creates an environment of scarcity. It also means that you might be watched more than you normally are. You might get the sense that you aren't trusted as much and that they're monitoring you to make sure you're actually very productive. This just feels like you have to prove yourself yourself all over again. And Pim actually felt that way too.
After that person was let go, we noticed a more requiring stance on filling out comments, filling out tasks properly, keeping track of the time, better sticking to deadlines. And, that might not have been per se because of him. It could have been that the company was trying to be more, efficient with their time, but it did kind of impact us negatively because we were used to getting a lot of freedom, getting a lot of time, which was great for morale. And the fact that we didn't get that anymore did hurt us.
Clearly, the trust had been broken, but not because of anything that Pim said or did, but it was because of the nature of the layoffs going on around him. You and your work starts to become a lot more transactional. You're not really seen as a person anymore. Are you worth the amount that you're making? Are you actually bringing value to the company? I chatted with Tanuj about this recently as well. He's a software engineer at a startup, and he saw some negative consequences to layoffs going on as well.
During the layoffs, I actually thought the workloads had been increased a lot for me because they do not want to hire anybody, because they want to save up their expenses somehow. So there is that. Well, because I'm currently actually handling one of their projects, one of their main life projects, and they want me to support 2 other projects as well. So it's kind of literally bogging down us with the projects and all, supporting 2-3 other projects as well. So it kind of literally bogging down on me as in a mental aspect actually, because in this year only, when I started working in the company, I have fallen sick 3 to 4 times. So yeah, it really is affecting.
With layoffs, there's this expectation that more needs to get done in the same amount of time, no matter what the cost. Tanuj even mentioned that his mental health was affected because of having to juggle all these different projects. Again, getting laid off means that you no longer have financial security, and that's a big deal. You have bills to pay, and suddenly your life gets upended because you no longer have a job. So there is something to say about still having a job and getting paid, but it's kind of a similar concept to surviving versus thriving. No matter which category you fall into, you'll each have your own set of problems to deal with. I personally wouldn't want to be forced out of a company against my will, but I also don't want to bend over backwards just to keep my head afloat. Okay, so how can companies actually re-engage people that are left over? Is it more morale events or more interesting work? What do they need to do to create a safe space for employees to be able to breathe again? Well, of course, I read another article to answer this question. Okay, so one thing that employers can do is being transparent and empathetic. So this article talks about how often layoffs are announced to employees with no reason or insight into the decision making. Even if you can't go into specific details or give too much information, let employees understand why the layoff was necessary. Take responsibility for layoffs and outline what is being done to prevent them in the future. And I do think this really matters. Communication is key here. If you suddenly see a bunch of people being let go or fired without any explanation, it really makes you worried about your position at the company because, these people were let go and there's no explanation whatsoever. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for your workload? What does it mean for the future of the company, right? So if it goes unaddressed, it just feels like you're being left out of the loop and that you're not important enough at the company to be given an explanation for this, right? Because it's going to affect you a lot when people are laid off from the team. So it's important that managers get behind this immediately and start to give more information about what's going on. So another one is check in with your people, which kind of goes hand in hand with what we just talked about. How are those who are still with the company feeling? What are they worrying about? Help your leaders support their teams through the aftershock of a layoff with information and resources. As you make changes after a layoff, include leaders of all levels in change management plans. Again, this is super important. If you just kind of leave this weird thing in the air hanging where people have been laid off and you don't really want to talk about it, obviously people are going to talk behind your back about what's going on and speculate. And that's when things kind of get out of hand because our imagination is much more wild than reality. So if we don't know what's going on, we're going to start making assumptions and those assumptions will probably not be good. And then the company also has to maintain the employee experience. Your departing employees also carry your reputation with them. Do all you can to create a supported, positive separation experience. While you may be cutting costs, there are simple, no-cost things you can do to maintain a culture of high care and trust. Can your recruiters become outplacement specialists, resume editors, or interview coaches? Can your HR team adopt a high care approach to the separation? So there are things in the system that you can do as well. So I think HR is a big part of it because HR is typically the group of people that are letting this person go, right? They're physically talking to this person with the hiring manager usually and letting them go. And so it's important that they do this with a level of empathy and in a way where it's definitely not mutual, but at least like the separation is mutual, right? So don't make it a difficult, ugly process. This should be a process that as much as possible, it should be pleasant for the person being let go. So even with packages, right? Like with severance packages, I feel like companies should be pretty generous because they chose to employ people, especially with tech, right? The tech industry in general employed during COVID because there was so much digital traffic and e-commerce traffic that all these companies had to quickly hire as many software engineers as possible. Now, as soon as that traffic started to die down, and obviously other reasons as well, AI and some other innovations came out, they started letting people go. So it is a contract at the end of the day. Just, don't think of it as more than that, but there has to be some humanity or empathy to this contract as well. And the last thing is show appreciation. Show heartfelt, genuine personal appreciation for your employees who will continue with you after the layoffs and who will depend on you to keep going. A message that accompanies a sincere gesture of thanks for their understanding and continued contributions will go a long way to reassure them that they're valued. Don't forget that these employees that are staying are choosing to stay. As I mentioned earlier, there's an increased chance, 7.7% chance of your employees leaving if they experience their colleagues getting let go. So you want to still create this space for the people that are left over where they can still feel safe. They can feel like they're a valued member of the team, and it's not like you're hanging this layoff or firing over their head. I think that's really, really important. The psychological safety has to be there. Otherwise, those people's work will start to just get worse and worse over time. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide how much toxicity you want to deal with and how you can navigate the culture post-layoffs at your company. So good luck.